I can ask.
Okay.
Do a speech.
No, I won't do any speeches. I'll just greet Cyril. I just wrote an article for the Croatian newspaper about the Golden Age. It will be published on Sunday. I wrote that I fell in love with you, not personally, but
Come on.
when I first read Three Shadows, it was the book I read in 2008 or something like that. Yeah, 2008, and I was blown away by the drawings and by the story, and that was for me, that was curious, because there aren't so many good writers and artists, in the same person, and you are still young, but you were much younger then. So to have such a strong story, such a really powerful story, a powerful subject, and devastating in a way, for such a young author, it was wow. And then I read all the other books, and Portugal. I published Ekvinocija. It's what's your secret? How come you? How do you get so better and better? I mean, after Three Shadows, it's incredible. And to me, maybe the Golden Age, maybe it's your in the terms of art, of drawing, maybe it's your peak. I'm not sure, but when I look, I looked at Three Shadows, Portugal, Ekvinocija, and Golden Age, and it seems to me that Golden Age is, it's one step further in terms of the art. It's incredible. So. How do you do it?
Well, thank you so much. I don't know how to answer to that humbly, but well, to start to answer, I can say a few words about Three Shadows.
Okay.
In fact, at that moment of my career, I should say, I have done books before, and in fact, when I started to draw Three Shadows, I was seriously thinking about quitting, stop doing comics, because I felt that I didn't really manage to find my way, and I wasn't self-confident with my own desire of writing, drawing, etc., etc. And in fact, which is weird, is that when I started Three Shadows with the help of Lewis Trondheim, which was very important for me at that moment, because because I felt closed in myself, stuck in my own words, without finding a way to manage to do something that was close to what I would like to do. And I talked a little with Lewis. I didn't know him, so he was very kind, because I wrote him, and he answered me, and
Lewis is really, really kind.
Yes.
He's a nice guy.
He's a nice guy and very generous.
Yes.
So he proposed me, not how to say that, not to help me, but to be a positive reader.
Yeah.
So he proposed me to send him the story while I was writing it. I think it was just to give me self-confidence. And it was a real help. And and also, he just told me, don't pay attention about the size of the book, blah blah blah. Just feel free and do what you deeply want to do. And I say, okay, we'll try to do that. So, to be honest, I don't know if it's like always, his book is good or not, etc. But I know that at that moment, I managed to do something which is just be close to what I was planned to do. Very often you have ideas in yourself, and it takes a long time sometimes for yourself to find the way to express them. And I think that I am how to say that in English? I don't know. I mean, it takes me a long time to manage to find a way to be an artist, something like that. You know, to find a way to really express myself, because I got, I don't know, like a lot of people, a lot of inhibitions, doubt, etc., etc. So after that, each book gives me more self-confidence, not about me, blah, 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 but just about that it makes sense to do books. And I think I understood that I do books to answer questions that I want to think about, to deal with, to find solutions. And so I use books like I don't know, someone who studied theology. You know, he got deep question in himself, and he spent a lot of time to try to answer that.
Yes, because your books are not. When we say comic books, people in general are thinking about, I don't know, Asterix or Tintin, or like some normal adventure, or some, I don't know, polar, or some crime books. But the books you write are an excuse for. I mean, adventure is just a setting, but the themes are social. It's important subjects that are. The adventure is just you know, to have a nice balance between, not to have just some boring books about some boring questions.
People speaking
But when you have adventure, like in Golden Age, you have adventure, you have a quest, you have a mystery that needs to be explained.
Mm-hmm.
But in the background there is some important social questions, women's feminism, fraternité, égalité, and stuff like that, which is, you know, and to me, so that explains, to me it makes perfect sense that you through your books you speak about the things that bother you, that you want to answer to. So
and which is specific with Golden Age. It's a co-writing. So we were. I wrote it with Roxane Morel, and that means that, which is specific with this book, it's not only my concern, it's something that we shared
together.
And we shared together the idea that we would love to do an entertaining story with a deep underground political issue. And we really tried to do that. That means also, I don't know what to think about the drawing, if it's better or not than before, but I know that I consciously try to do something appealing, because I and Roxane really want the audience, how to say that, welcome them in the book, feel comfortable and happy, and just to give us a chance that they hear what we politically try to do, try to say, sorry. So it's very specific because you know, the way Golden Age is drawn with a lot of ornaments, etc., something very shiny, but it's a strategy, in fact.
To attract.
To seduce, to seduce people, and to convert them.
I was sending to my editor in newspaper. They often need a few panels to illustrate the article.
Mm-hmm.
So I send them about 10 or 15 splash pages, you know, which, okay, so you choose whatever you want, because they are all, I mean, the scenes, the attack on the castle, and the scene of the castle in the night, it's fantastic. It's so detailed, but it's not stiff. It's not dead. It's so much alive. Which is, you know, when you have the artist in especially in BD is full of artists who are very much detailed, but it often comes out as a photograph, it comes out as not you don't feel there is a life in it. It's just an very precise illustration of a building or something. But when I look at your pages, which are so full of details, which are very intense, but you feel alive, you feel a movement, you feel they are not static, they are not dead.
I mean, that's nice if it's the case. But in fact, maybe it was easier with Golden Age because we were not stuck with historical
the buildings,
issues, etc. It was quite free, so I can play a lot with the details. I'm not, you know, for instance, if in France or wherever, if you do a book about Napoleon War, you have to be absolutely precise.
Yes.
You know, the rebel be on the good side, blah blah blah. And if you don't, the reader will say, "Oh, come on, it's not the real truth."
Or airplanes or anything.
And also, it's important for this kind of stories to follow, to be precise, to follow the details, etc. But the risk is to sometimes to be a bit dead, as you say, because it's really tricky to be very close to documentary and to documents and feel free to draw. There is a conflict between those two directions, and it's some artists. I don't know if you maybe you know Hervé Tancrel. He did.
I published the Niatla.
Yeah, and he drew a book with. Le Faux Visage. It's with l'association David B. With David B. Who wrote the script, and it's a story about organized crime during the 80s, something like that. And he managed to do
it's published in Croatian.
And that's nice.
Yeah.
So you can discover it. And and it's very detailed, very precise, but also he managed to make it very, very living and you know very moving because he's a high-level talented drawer. But it's few. Not so many people are able to do that, and I'm not sure I would be able to do that. In Golden Age, I was free to go everywhere, to create space that doesn't exist, to create costume that doesn't exist. The only point was to be to keep the magic of the story, the fantasy, and not lose the political sense. But it was in a way easier, so I can keep my natural drawing. Which is a bit cartoonish in
so
it gives
Disney
more something like that, animation style, I should say, and so it helps to feel free when you draw. But to be honest, sometimes I would love to have more energy to give you more, because you know, for instance, the battle scenes when they attack the cattle, etc. Sometimes I was really exhausted, but I would like to have more horses, more warriors, blah blah blah, fighting together, a lot everywhere. Well, it's a question of time, of energy, etc.
It must be exhausting because it's 400 pages.
It is. And at the end of the first volume, I was a bit, tired, so it was quite tricky to find the energy to do the second part.
But it's strange because it seems to me that like the second part is even more. At least I felt even more.
In a way, because there is more action. And I like that. I mean, it's not my specialty to draw action scenes. So it was quite a challenge, and it's not that easy. I talked about it a lot yesterday with the students in the Fine Art School about storyboarding because. I explained that storyboarding action scene is very interesting because suddenly there is so many problems to solve. Not only the sense of the story, but very very technical stuff like where are the characters opposite to the others, on which side of the bridge, and that be sure that the readers always understand the situation, etc., etc. It's a real science. I'm not that master for that. But it was quite challenging and exciting to do.
Yes, I'm not sure if I remember right, but I think that François Bourgeon made maquettes. Model, and so he did photographs. and
I didn't know that.
so,
For the boat,
on the
etc.?
boat
Yes.
and
Yeah.
on the of the
That's
castles.
great.
So and so that he could really get the angles to get the angles right in order to solve the problem.
Yeah, but it could be a real help. But
Yeah.
I know that some friend of mine do that kind of stuff. For instance, for science fiction stuff, you know,
Yes.
when the backgrounds are too tricky, etc.,
Yeah.
it's a real help.
Yeah.
But the problem is sometimes that it helps, but it doesn't give the total answer. Because you know you have to cheat when you draw every time. You have to make choices, and
you
make
must avoid that to reader to see the image to see the
and
photograph
to be expressive when you want to.
Yeah.
You have to cheat.
Yeah.
You have to change the perspective. Even in theory, the character is supposed to be here. In fact, you move him a little, like in cinema. I mean,
Yes.
you
Yes.
always do that. You move a little because it's better in the frame, etc.,
Yeah.
etc.
Почти malo, da sam
Okay.
malo vidi.
So, from the perspective of translators, I must say I'm very happy to be here and with our dear guests in this nice library. And it's actually thanks to you that I entered the world of
Comic books.
beautiful comic books, graphic novels that Marco publishes. It was sometime 6 years ago when a friend of mine, a great translator, Marija Jurić, she called me and she knew the strategy and she said, "Oh, I'm sure you'd like to translate comics." And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm barely coping because I was already involved for 15 years with translating books from French and Spanish. I had a daily job, little kids,
A real
aging
job, you mean?
parents,
Yeah.
a real job." And I was like, "No way, I'm hardly managing what
Leave me
I'm
alone.
doing now." But still, you know, translators are very curious,
Yeah.
and you know, you just can't let the chance pass by. So I said, "Okay, I don't know." And then I contacted Mark and I said, "Look, I know nothing about it really. I must admit, I was not following anything that was going on the scene." And I said, "But you know, I don't want just to turn you down. Can you send me some links?" And then he sent me a few links, and I'm sure I opened first your
Really?
Ekvinox. And I was like, I just couldn't believe because I didn't know what to expect. You know, I probably had some funny ideas about what comics should be. And then I was amazed by illustrations, first of all, because it was the first thing I saw, the colors and everything. It's so atmospheric. I was immediately, and I knew already it's, you know, lost any attempt of escaping it. And then I started reading, and then it was good because I saw it was rather extensive, but still not that much text, except for parts that are fully pages filled with text, and that was like some connection to sort
that's
of
nice.
go from translating books
Bridge. Yeah.
to there, because I was sort of like, oh, how can I now? There are other people that already translate comics. What will I do now? I'm an intruder from the world of, you know, other types of literature. And that's how it started. It was beautiful. It's so complex. The story and the like ordinary life with its ups and downs, with so many characters, and one of these same thing as with books. You know, you really feel sorry when you are done, when you are finished, when you have to leave
nice.
from it. It's very nice. So, like, you know, when you take a book or a comic, when you open it, you know immediately when there is a tone, when there is atmosphere, when there are colors. And also, I must say, as a translator, and I'm sure that I speak in the name of all of us, when it comes to translating comics, you feel especially humble because you feel you have so little to do, especially when you have an author who is a writer and illustrator. He's done so much, and I only have, like, you know, that much to
Only
do.
have,
For which, but you know, it's a little, but then the responsibility is even bigger.
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
have to be just precise. You have
Precise,
to find
into details.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in these little windows, little space, you have to
Yeah.
find the right tone, and especially, you know, sometimes the smallest part, like some exclamations or like some onomatopoeic noise, something. If we try to translate it, we want to make it just. So we are happy ones, you know. It's good to be there and
Yeah.
brave to accept
I can-
challenges.
I can say that she did a wonderful job because the big problem with the translator who did only books, and when they come to translate the comics, they tend to forget the image.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
they read the text, and you know the text, when you read a sentence in a balloon, it can mean many things, but in context of the image. So, but she didn't have that problem, and she entered right away, and she really did a great job. She translated later on Arabe du Futur. So you know it was maybe her masterpiece so far.
It's not over yet.
Yeah, it's not over yet. Yeah.
But I stayed with Fibra.
Yeah, so it's she really did a good job, and there is one other problem, in when you translate the book, you can have as many space as you want.
Yeah.
When you translate the comic, you have the size of the balloon is
It's a real problem.
it's this, and you cannot put, you know, a sentence with 10 words if it only contain 3 words.
Yeah.
So you need to. It's very tricky to not only translate but to adjust
And keep the reason
and everything
yeah.
to squeeze into the space. So
It's particularly true to translator who translate manga, because in
Yeah.
one balloon you can have a lot of kanji. You can have like the equivalent of 3 or 4 sentences, and you have to translate it by one sentence.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a proverb in Italian, traduttore traditore. The translator is a traitor, but it's his job to
of course.
to commit treason to the text,
Yeah.
to transform it to
And
something
not
else,
to show it.
and not to show it. The reader mustn't show,
Mustn't
mustn't
know.
be aware of it.
Yeah.
Do not admit it.
But we are happy because we never have a blank page. Our authors, they made everything for us, so we just follow.
But I would love to be able, you know, because there is always a frustration when you receive a translated book, because each time I would love to be able to understand the language, to feel the small differences, you know, which are connected to your own culture, etc., etc. And it's a pity. Even in English, I'm not really able to appreciate all those tiny differences.
So to comfort you, I'm only satisfied with my translation when I read it in French, for instance, and in Croatian when it sounds, when it gives me all the same sensations.
Yeah.
Then I'm happy. So let's hope.
Samuel, you came from Angoulême.
Yes.
Can you share with us what will you do? What are you up to in Croatia? And just some insight, because we all know, like France, Italy, and Belgium, and in Portugal you find these big comic books, bookstores, libraries, and so on. And some insight in the comic book life today in Europe.
Yes. First of all, I'm very pleased to be here in Zagreb, because you know, on a personal issue, in France we have 3 lockdowns due to the pandemic, so I didn't travel a lot, obviously.
That's very honest to say that.
Yeah. So it was very strange to take plane, to pass frontiers, not to wear mask in the street, but
refreshing.
yeah, it's refreshing. But I'm here today to give a training to librarians, to explain them what we do in Angoulême, in the library of comics in Angoulême, which is the biggest library of comics in Europe. We have 3 libraries. In fact, it's not just one library. We have a public library like this one, when you can enter and borrow books, comics essentially. We also have a center of research and documentation for students and teachers, because in Angoulême we have drawing school, we have people who are studying comics to do Comics Museum to publish books about comics, and we also have a patrimonial fund, a patrimonial collection where we keep books, many comics as possible, from the beginning of comics to the future. We have like 2,100 comics stored in our library. It's one of the biggest collection in the world. The second one in the world, I think. The first one is in America, in Ohio, and we will never catch up with them because they have like everything which have been published on Earth on comics. We don't, but we have like 90% of what have been published in France since the beginning of the story of comics. So I came here today to share some of my some aspects of my works to librarians here, because even in France it's unusual to have a library with only comics. We are one of the country of comics in the world, biggest country of comics, but it's the presence of comics in the libraries are relatively recent, because in France before the 80s comics was regarded as a sub-literature, and many librarians thought that comics were not bad, but just for kids. It's like a teen, and when you grow as a teenager, you shouldn't read comics anymore. You have to read real books. Real books. I think all comics fans in France in the 80s and the beginning of the 90s have heard that from their parents, except the parents who were themselves reading comics. My father, for example, has a huge collection of comics, so I didn't hear that. My mother reads a lot of comics, but things have changed. And in the 90s, the Festival of Comics became very important. The Ministry of Culture recognized comics as a valid literature. There are schools of comics, and now we also have last year. It has been a bit clouded by the pandemic, but it was the year of comics in France, and it was an official year of comics. And it was very important because a lot of museums, not comics museum only, but a lot of museums in France did exhibition of comics, and it was like an official consecration of comics as a valid form of literature in France. So today comics is taught in some class in high school. There are theses on comics, and almost nobody discussed the comics as a valid sub-literature. It's almost gone. For example, last year, the Museum of Money in Paris held an exhibition of Scrooge McDuck. Oncle Picsou. I don't know it. Because many structures, I think, in France now consider comics as a bridge to their discipline to another discipline. You can have comics on sport, you can have comics on politics, you can have comics on feminism, on everything. And we have a particularity in France, which is also a bit of a curse. There are too much comics published in years, about 5,000 comics. The good point, the good side of it, it's there's comic on everything and of all type of qualities and for all of publics. But the very rough challenge about this, it's now very hard for comics authors to live about what they do, because there's too much publications in regard to the number of readers, and it's a very complicated political issues nowadays. I don't know if you agree.
I do agree.
There is a campaign I've seen. Bajram, je suis créateur or something like that. Hashtag I am creator or something like that.
I haven't seen it, but I'm not surprised. I mean, because I know that Denis Bajram is very involved in all the how to say that
syndicate.
Syndicate fights for the authors, etc. Since a long time. Since the creation of the syndicate of authors.
I've seen on Facebook something like I'm creator, and what I do is create stories, and I not him, but many of us cannot make a living
that's right.
by creating stories, because there are 5,000 books each year, so it's 15 a day.
Yes.
It's 15 books each day. So
Which is a lot.
Which is. I mean, if you're a librarian, how do you put it? Where can you put it to the audience? How can you promote it? How can you? So
I think it's almost impossible.
Yes,
To be honest, I mean, I think some of it is the same. I go very often in bookshops. I love read books, and I'm sure I only see 10%.
maybe.
I don't say read, see.
Yes.
I only see 10% of the book published in a year. So it's a real problem because that means, in fact, in a way, those books don't exist, which is a shame because there is a lot of talent, a lot of powerful creation in all these books, but they don't manage to find a way to be in contact to the readers. And well, I don't have a solution, but I think one day or another we will have to find one.
Yeah.
You are the lucky one in
Yeah.
terms that you are, to my opinion, you are a star. Let's say. I mean,
But I feel lucky, and I know I'm lucky. Yeah, just to give you an example, on the second lockdown, I think, Golden Age Part 2 released, and in fact, it doesn't impact the book because I'm lucky enough,
to pay your
successful
audience.
enough that the audience trust in the book without having to go to the bookshop to see they buy it. But and I know how lucky I am with this situation because so many friends of mine and so many books disappear during this period. They arrived in the bookshop, nobody saw them, and they came back to the publisher stuff. So it's a real problem.
Yeah, we often say that the life cycle of a book. What a pleasant sound! It's the life cycle of a comic in France is inferior to 2 months. If your comic 2 months, if your comics is not a success in 2 months, you are dead, and everything is sent back to the publisher, and the publisher has to destroy the books. So a lot of comics are not even seen by the public. You're absolutely right, and not only crappy ones or bad ones. Wonderful gems disappear each month because nobody saw them. So we have a lot of work as booksellers, as librarians, to discover them, to promote them, and to buy them relatively quick. If we had, if we really like in a book, if we believe in a book, we have to buy it really quick because we know in France that libraries are important to the bouche à oreille, je sais pas comment. People borrow books in a library and tell their friends, oh, this one is really good, and
Word of mouth.
Yeah, word of mouth, exactly. So, but it's very difficult because we can't keep the pace. We would have to read all day to read everything, and we would like to, but it's not our job to read all day.
Just to give you an example, because there is something that happened because of all of that. There is a place for some specific book in each category, but not a lot of place. And that means, for instance, that in a year there is a place for a successful black and white book,
exactly.
for instance, maybe 2, not more. And for instance, very often I thought that, for instance, if Free Shadows was published at the same time as Blanket, maybe my book disappeared. Because the year of Blanket, all the focus was on his book, which is normal. It's very good, an excellent book, but there is no place for all the books. So there is a part of luck.
But also you have. When you say there is 5,000 books each year in France, of course there is a variety of subjects, a variety of the authors, but there are not so many authors that have particular style that stands out. You stand out because your style is only yours. unique in a way.
I mean, every artist is unique. We can talk about the relative, how to say that, creative energy, talent of each other, but in a way, everyone is unique. I think it's not a question of you're not successful or you're not managed to stand up because of your talent. There is a lot of. I mean, for instance, I'm doing books since 20 years. That means that I have the luck to have an history of a first success. The first success helps you to have another success, and then when you have success, people trust you, people pay attention to your work, and sometimes even if your book is a bit weak, maybe compared to other, in a way it doesn't affect the success, because you know we pay rich people. I mean, it's like in every art, in every, well, I don't know, every space, I don't know. But I think in comic book it's the same. So I know that I have the luck to stand up, not because I'm super talented. I hope that when I will do crap, or when I do crap, nobody will care. But I hope. But I know that it's a question also of the bookshop sellers pay attention to my work. They wait for it, and I'm lucky with that. My publisher know that maybe he can have success with my books, so he promotes a lot my books, not because it's better than the other, because he think he can win money with it. I mean, it's a lot of stuff. So when you are an artist, you have to deal with all that. You have to deal with the idea that maybe your success, not because only you are talented, or maybe you doesn't have success doesn't mean that you are not talented. You have to deal with all that. But the problem is that as an artist, you don't have the key to access to the readers. It's not, you can't. You can do the best to do that. You can, play the game as much as possible, meet people, go to signing session, etc., etc. But you don't have the key. In fact, few people have the keys.
Yes. Jacques Lena has very big keys.
A big one. Yeah.
I think you were referring to luck, and we had quite a good example at Angoulême this year. The festival couldn't take place. It was cancelled. We had a ceremony to give prize to some books, but I won't say that nobody saw them, but almost nobody saw them. It was a Facebook Live. It wasn't working very well. The press coverage was very weak because everyone was talking about the pandemic, the lockdown, what is closed, what is open. Nobody had in mind comics this year. So the books who won this year, who won prizes, they don't have a big success or sale accelerator due to the price of the festival, which was not the case 1 year before. It's not a problem for the Fauve d'Or and the big winners. They will sell anyway. They are major books. But for example, for the prize of Revelation, for the prize of the first book, which was Tens this year, Tens, great comics by the way. Nobody will remember this was the revelation of this year, and it's pure luck. You can't know the festival will be cancelled because of pandemic. When you release a book, you don't think.
Who won this year? I don't remember who won.
L'accident de chasse. It's a comic.
I know the American one.
Yes, it's an American one. I don't remember the name.
The hunting accident.
The hunting accident.
Yeah.
A story would take place in Chicago.
It was black and white.
Yes.
Another question: why does it's not only French, but in American too. Why do you prefer color over black and white? I mean, I really like your three chefs. Your work with black and white is fantastic. I mean, your color work is also fantastic because you do the color yourself. But sometimes the color really tends to suffocate the art.
Sometimes,
So, is it because the audience wants strictly color, or is it just the publishers? They just push color as an obligation or what?
I think that the publisher thinks that the audience have a problem with black and white books.
Still today.
Yeah, and on my mind, on my side, I mean, I don't prefer colors to black or white. For me, it's a question of story. It's according to the subject. It's according of the mood you want to create in the book, and it's not similar. I mean, black and white create a specific aesthetic energy mood, a lot of specific energy mood, because there is not only black and white.
Yeah.
There is a lot of several ways to use black and white, which can be very expressive and very emotive, or very dark, or deep, or whatever. So I think it's really it's a pure, according to the artist, it's a pure aesthetical artistical question, an issue. But it's true that sometimes when you want to do a black and white book, you have to struggle with your publisher. It depends on the publisher.
Yes.
But on the big mainstream
level.
company, it will be tricky to say no, I want a black and white book. But there is still a lot of black and white book in France, and
Yeah.
very expressive.
The special editions, yeah.
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 Well,
and there are publishers who only publish black and white, like
Yeah,
l'association publish
Absolutely.
only black and white.
Absolutely, yeah, and excellent books.
Yes, of course.
So I mean, it's really a question of for the artist of personal feeling about your own story, the way you feel your story, and because each time it's the same question when you write a script and you ask yourself, okay, how is the best way to draw that? And there is not a good answer. You only have to find your answer. So right now, since Three Shadows, I always thought that color would help the story to be more powerful. But it's not a general point of view. It was really dedicated to the specific stories.
Yeah, I understand.
I think maybe there's in the head of I'm not speaking for them, but in the head of certain publishers, black and white could still have a bad image, because in the past, in the 80s, 70s, black and white has also, it was cheap literature which was in black and white. It was erotic pamphlets. You buy it in the railroad station before a trip. Cheap crime stories, etc. Or children's stories. For example, the works of Gottlieb, which are extraordinary, which are wonderful, but were disregarded in the 70s as stuff for kids. They were in black and white, and so I think some publishers still have an idea that black and white is cheaper than color.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Unless attractive.
Yeah, unless attractive.
As
Exactly.
you guys can see, what they've done with Corto Maltese, for
Yes.
instance, and you know, this tool, or maybe they're right. I don't know. I mean, I'm not thinking about point of view of economical issues for the publisher. So maybe for Corto Maltese, it really helps suddenly to reprint the colored version. As a reader, I was
It was atrocious.
yeah,
they also did the remontage. They cut out the so it. I didn't like.
Corto is in black and white.
Yeah,
but
it's
so
in black
the
and white, and
colored
it's
version doesn't exist.
original format.
yeah.
No, what Catherman did with it, they cut 3 pages into 4,
Really?
something like that. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
because the original pages are too gestrichted, and I don't know. It's four strips,
Yeah.
and they did the remontage into three strip page.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you cut,
So they change absolutely the structure of the book. And,
It's not the same story.
it's not the same story.
It's not the same
story.
And
Just a second. We have. I just wanted to. We are a little bit out of time, but one book we haven't mentioned. It is the Portugal. Portugal that was published here. Portugal is a beautiful story, a dreamy story about the life of the comic book artist, and it's about Simon who likes who swims in his hammock, and his life is his connection with his girlfriend falls apart, and he thinks, should I write? Should I draw? And so what would I do? And then he has this message. He receives this invitation from Portugal, from the land of his ancestors. So I would like to know. It is a beautiful book. It has a movie ambience, and then how much is it autobiographical and so on with you in this book?
Well, for this specific book, it's a lot. There is a lot of autobiographical material inside. The main story is autobiographical, but to be honest, except A Golden Age, all my books more or less are autobiographical. I always put a lot of my. I don't have a lot of imagination, in fact. So very often I use my. It's also because I try to answer to personal questions, and to answer to these personal questions, I use my personal feelings. Even not to talk about me, but because I think that it could be more precise and not how to say that, fake. Just to be sure that I'm honest with the characters. I rather use what I really know or feel, to be honest with the characters or the situation, etc., etc. And Portugal was an important book for me because it was a success, which is important for an artist. It really helps you for a lot of reasons, and it was a success because. Particularly because the book got a prize in Angoulême Festival, and it really helped to focus on the book. And it's important not only for your ego, of course, for your ego. It's good when everybody suddenly say, "Oh, you're wonderful." Okay, it's nice, but mostly because it changes your economy. And changing your economy, it really gives you suddenly a lot of freedom in your own work. Which is, of course, I mean, everybody wants to live as possible in a comfortable way, of course. But when you're an artist, the problem, like everybody, is that, okay, you don't feel comfortable in your own life, but also you don't feel comfortable in your own work. You're in a way, I think maybe it's too much to say that, but you're in danger with your own art when you are in economical difficulties. You just don't manage to do your work as you would like to do it. So the success of Portugal really gave me suddenly the chance to have time to do things, to think a lot, to change my mind, to redo things, etc., etc. And I know how lucky I am about that, and I know that maybe I would never manage to do Ekvinocies, for instance, or maybe I won't have force enough and energy enough in myself to do this book if I wasn't feeling comfortable to try new stuff, to take time to write, to rewrite, etc., etc., etc. And so, and that's why this book is so important for me, not because it's a great book, because I don't have a specific point of view, but I don't know if it's good or not. Well, I know that it was close to what I would like to do, which is not that bad. But it's important for an artist when suddenly, as we talk about, suddenly readers saw your work. It changed a lot.
So when you have a new project, I believe you now have completely open hands. You can probably do whatever you want to do. Or even so even you don't have that kind of liberty, that kind of.
No, because the problem is first of all you have to deal with your limits, and everybody got some. And so you're not, it's not like an open space in front of you where you can do what. It's not true. There is a lot of things I'm not able to do, and I know that. But it's okay because, of course, your limits push you to find solutions to, surround them, etc., etc. Right now, I don't know. I'm in a specific moment. I don't know. Maybe because I was exhausted after a golden age, but not only for that. I had the feeling to do a little break with comics. Also for personal reasons, and for a while I lost a little, the energy of drawing, of do stuff, etc., etc. And I find this energy back by working an animation project, and it was nice, to feel again the happiness of doing things when you have the feeling during a moment to lose it. But I still love comics a lot, and I'm pretty sure I will do again comics books. But for a while, I need a little break, I think, and also to
change the subject, change the
and also to refresh yourself. And but for instance, also I know that I'm lucky to be in situation to be able to stop two books for maybe years, and come back, and readers, if I don't go away for too long time, they will remember me. I know, for instance, that for a lot of comics artists, they have to do books every year, and sometimes more than every year.
To remind.
Yeah, to first to survive.
Yes.
And secondly, just to have a chance that the readers slowly, step by step, saw them and discover the work. And it's a really, for that, it's a really tough job, really.
You were talking about the freedom to create when you have a success. I often think of a specific type of successful comic book in France, which are certainly not translated here. They are comic books, funny books about jobs. The firemen, the policemen, the rugbymen, the footballers. They are successful books, not very good books, but they are successful books. I think the authors live pretty well, but they don't have artistic freedom. All these books look the same, that's the same jokes. It's made to be sold really quickly in supermarkets and everything. And I think those authors, they can't express themselves. They make a living of it, but they can't express themselves. And when you have a great success, artistic success in comics, it's a really great opportunity and chance. And other thing, I was thinking, listening to you, but when authors say, successful authors say, "Oh, I need a break, I will stop from comics," they also say just after that, "But I will do animation and build a house and take a tour all around the world and go to the moon and come back, and then I will do comics because I will feel rest."
There is an exposition that is awaiting us, so we have to move the exposition to open. But the life of the comic book artist is the life of the crusader. And so when you are out of your studio, we can talk about it hours and hours, but I hope we will have some other opportunity. I'm thanking the house, the library, Marija Jurić Zagorka, for hosting us. And
thank you very much.
This library is beautiful.
Yes, it is.
It's a beautiful place. Yeah.
It is just the library for the comic books. And then, please, one more applause for Željka, for Samuel and Marko.
It's always great when we have time to talk.